So, my friends, we arrive once more at the hour of Yiskor. Hopefully, as you came back into the sanctuary, you received a copy of our Book of Remembrance. Our Yiskor service will be making its way through the Book of Remembrance, only referencing our Machzor briefly. I invite you to turn to page 1 in the Book of Remembrance, as we are reminded that mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex, too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of the Spirit our loved ones gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of their light and their warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, healing and peace.
So here we are at Yiskor, tired, hungry, thirsty, emotionally fragile. Did I mention hungry? Why is it that in this most vulnerable of moments we stop to think of our loved ones who have predeceased us? Yiskor means remembering. Who are you remembering today? Take a moment to bring to mind the loved one or loved ones you most miss. What reminds you most about them? What is it that you miss the most? What is the hardest part about being without them? What had you hoped to share that you didn't get to? I cannot tell you how sad it makes me to know that my father never got to meet his granddaughter, Elena. And that I don't know if he even understood when we told him that we were pregnant and that she was coming in the last weeks of his life. What joy he would have had in her joie de vivre, her thunderous footsteps up and down the hall, Who said pitter-patter of little feet? Hearing her say Pepe. Henry James wrote, "Sorrow comes in great waves, but it rolls over us, and though it may almost smother us, it leaves us on the spot. And we know that if it is strong, we are stronger, inasmuch as it passes, and we remain." At times, the sense of loss can be so great. We almost wish the waves would carry us off, because we cannot bear the pain of being left standing without the person we loved standing beside us. In the past couple of generations, we have moved death from being something that was a more common part of life to something more removed. When we think about the deaths of loved ones, modern medicine has meant that we often view death through a medical lens. Illness, treatment, recovery, and cure. And any deviation is perceived as a failure of medicine rather than something that is unavoidable and universal for each and every one of us. Judaism helps us to structure mourning rites, and many of these rites fit well with psychological needs for bereavement. The Jewish lens is Shiva Shloshim in the Yahrzeit. But loss is separate to grieving. It is in many ways without structure because loss is such a deeply personal experience, coloured by our relationship with our loved one, the circumstances of their death, and how we feel about their death. Do we feel cheated that they were taken from us too soon? Was death something of a friend after a long period of suffering? Even in these circumstances, we may take comfort in the fact that suffering has ended, but that doesn't necessarily mean we were prepared for the fact that an end to their suffering is just the beginning of us having to navigate a path without our loved one's presence. And so at Yiskor we remember loved ones, the small things, the way they brushed their hair, that assumes they had any, or cooked their breakfast, that goodnight kiss or hug goodnight, the unconditional love shared and reciprocated, the depth of love and commitment and shared experience, the shared plans for a bright future, a shared future, a future that was not to be. The things they did that drove you nuts, but now you would love to find that dirty mug in the sink or the socks on the floor. My grandparents, my Bubba and Zayda, lived in Victoria Street in Elsternwick. Their home was a bastion of love and affection, of good food, fun activities, sleepovers, a listening ear, and endless love. My grandfather was endlessly tinkering in his garden. My grandmother was making homemade lokshen mit yoch, hand-rolled noodles and chicken soup. What could be better? I was their favourite grandson. Not that they played favourites. Yet over the years I would come and visit the familiar home on Victoria Street with its worn carpet and its homey smells. This home was the definition of unconditional love. Yet time marches on, and just as I grew older, so inevitably did they. My Zayd had suffered from dementia, and yet we looked after him at home until he became a danger both to himself and to others. And my Bubba, we managed firstly to look after her in her own precious home, filled with her memories and her familiar friends. And then when she could no longer be left alone, we moved her into my parents' house a few blocks away and would take her to visit her home every day. Just some 2 years ago, I buried my father, who had suffered for many years in great pain. There's a French saying that one can be struck by old age, a coup de vieux. My father was struck by old age after an accident playing, of all things, table tennis, like the good Frenchman that he was. What followed was 10 years of pain management, and a deterioration of a fit elderly man into a frail, fragile old man who we watched suffer without means to ease his suffering. In each of these cases, we mourned each small loss along the way. The losses were incremental. It gave us time to grieve smaller losses, and yet, even when a death at home, surrounded by loved ones, at a ripe old age, sounds in many ways the natural order we are conditioned to accept. When you go home after the funeral and look around, the empty space is still enormous. The empty chair the following year at Pesach was almost too much to bear, and the fact that another chair was occupied by my daughter Elena brought home the nature of the cycle of life. But his absence is still real and especially difficult at key moments that he would so much have wanted to participate in. Just a few years ago, I buried my 28-year-old cousin, who died in tragic circumstances, taking his own life after a number of years of struggling with mental illness. It is difficult even now to find words that capture the depth of both my own grief at having watched the deterioration of my cousin, from a young man with such promise, having struggled with his personal demons for a number of years before his death. Having witnessed what his struggles and then the tragic circumstances of his death did to his parents, is perhaps one of my most profound and devastating experiences. The depth of a child, the death of a child, is universally feared because it is so far outside the conditioned, natural order of things. A good friend once described the grief he feels for the daughter he lost as being a hole in his heart which never heals, but which he has worked out a way to live around, one day at a time. For some of us, the best we ever manage is to find a way to get by. Healing is never actually completed. Rather, it remains a lifelong process of coping. Having accompanied many families through the loss of loved ones, burying their husband or wife or a sibling, the loss of a child leaves a mark that is indelible, especially when it is a young child or an infant. As I hold my 19-month-old daughter and anticipate holding a newborn in only a few weeks' time, I cannot fathom the depths of grief such a loss must entail. It is when we delve into the different types of loss that we realize Yiskor, remembering, is unique to each and every mourner. When I think about my grandparents, my father or my cousin, I have the comfort of happier memories of having loved and been loved in return, and of knowing that they lived. For families who lose a child or an infant, the loss is different. They may not have as many memories to hold on to, and they are instead left devastated with the hopes of a life they anticipated, of memories and milestones they looked forward to but will never realize. Loss is the very opposite of one size fits all. And so I think of my grandparents' home on Victoria Street, how significant it was to me. In only a few years after their death, it was sold, it was bulldozed, and of course it was transformed into 4 townhouses. There's nothing left of their home. The orchard of fruit trees. And all I feel when I drive past is the ongoing sadness of the loss which those townhouses represent. Where are my beloved Buba and Zaida? Where is the familiar home with its familiar sense? My wife has told me about how long it took before she was able to drive past her grandparents' home after the death of her own grandmother, and how seeing the hydrangea bush that had flowered every year of her childhood uprooted and replaced by an ugly, straggly-looking tree. This felt like an act of vandalism to what was a sacred memory. But in a way, while these changes to the tangible things we connect to our memories are difficult, we are blessed to have had them. Imagine how much harder this grief is to carry for those who don't have something tangible to touch or hold on to. The loss of an infant or child leaves us with fewer of the physical reminders, but just as many scars. And so we know that Jewish tradition is not to bring flowers to a grave, but rather to bring a stone, because flowers wilt and die, whereas the stone we place on our loved ones' graves are lasting. Our memories are tied to these physical representations, but what is most lasting and perhaps most important is the impact that our loved ones have had on who we are and who we become. One of the central prayers of the High Holidays is Unetane Tokef, which speaks to why we call these the days of awe. Awe is an interesting word because it is comprised of both wonder and fear. On Yom Kippur, some dress in white or even in a kittel. This tradition is the ritual dress of birth, of a wedding, of a funeral, the concept being that we are reborn in these moments of greatest joy as well as of greatest sadness. Today, here on Yom HaKippurim, we are as if we were dead. We fast, we don't eat, we don't drink, we don't take part in any physical part of our lives, symbolizing that we have died and these are no longer necessary. Taking on this part gives us a limited understanding as to what that actually means. At Yom Kippur, we are in shul praying for our very lives, praying that our names will be inscribed in the book of life for another year. We say, Gemar Chatima Tova, may you be inscribed for a year in the book of life. But even if we are fortunate and our names are inscribed, not just this year, but for many years to come, Unetane Tokef reminds us of the transitory nature of our physical existence, but the lasting nature of the metaphysical, or our spiritual selves. Our new Machzor, Mishkan Tshuva, translates a key paragraph as follows: we who are mortal, our origin is dust, and so is our end. We wear out our lives to get our bread like broken vessels, like withered grass, like a flower that must fade, a shadow moving on, a cloud passing by, mere dust on the wind, a dream that flies away. Our Machzor reminds us that for you, ever-living sovereign, time has no limits. For us, however, we are limited by both time and by understanding. Is the author's focus on the limitations of our physical presence on earth pointing us towards the need to create reasons for our spirit and memory to live beyond us? Even the small items our loved ones leave to us. My Bubba's sewing machine, or perhaps my grandfather's clock, don't have any real value except when viewed through the context of the memories which we imbue them with. Then and only then do these valueless items suddenly take on inestimable value. My wife is particularly attached to a shoebox containing envelopes written on by her grandmother, an old lotto entry, "It didn't win," and other items which are of no value to anyone else, except that when she opens the box, she still thinks she can smell the comforting smell of her grandmother. Clearly, what we leave behind is not just physical objects, which are simple things, void of any meaning without context. Unetane Tokef is reminding us of the transitory nature of our physical existence and perhaps giving us some semblance of hope that we will be remembered and that our spirit will live beyond our physical presence. But what will we be remembered for? How terribly uncomfortable a thought that is to consider. How difficult it is to consider what our lasting impact on the world will be, especially at a time when we think of the positive impact of our loved ones, that they had upon us. The high holidays fill us with a yearning for meaning and the hope that our lives are not futile. Unetane Tokef and other prayers today remind us that while we must accept that some things will fade away like the grass, like the flowers or the dreams, other elements are more real than ever. The intangible, the impact, these are the things we should be putting energy into creating. I remember my Buba, my Zayda, my father, my cousin. I have not allowed them to slip from my memory or my reality. The things which I have carried away from their lives are so much more than the physical objects or the few photos. These photos will be the starting place for me to tell my children of who these beloved people were and how they impacted my life. In Unetane Tokef we say, for every human hand leaves its mark, an imprint like no other. At Yiskor we think about our loved ones, and our memories help us realize that while we might have to do without the physical presence of those we love, we don't forget them. And we realize anew how irreplaceable they are. When we take this time to reflect on what made our loved ones unique, hopefully the next step is to realize that we too are unique and irreplaceable to those who love us. When we recite Kaddish or observe a loved one's yahrzeit, these markers serve as a recognition that the memories of our dead will always be with us. These rituals acknowledge that death ends a life, but not a relationship, and that grieving a person's loss is never really complete. Yiskor, we remember, we pay tribute, we cherish and we lead our lives honoring the lasting imprint our loved ones have left on us. What might we hope to take with us through the end of Yom Kippur and into the new year? Create memories. May their memories truly be for a blessing.
Psalm 16, on the top of page 3. I am ever mindful of God's presence. God is at my right hand. I shall never be shaken. So my heart rejoices, my whole being exults, and my body rests secure. For you will not abandon me to Sheol, or let the faithful one see the pit. You will teach me the path of life. In your presence is perfect joy. Delights are ever in your right hand. Psalm 103, Enosh. Our days like the grass of the field, like the flowers of the meadow, vanish in a momentary gust of wind, gone, never to be seen again. But God's love is infinite and with us forever. God's goodness reaches far into the future. This is the gift of the covenant. Adonai Ma'adam, page 5.
Adonai Ma'adam
If some messenger were to come to us with an offer that death be overthrown, but with the one inseparable condition that birth should also cease, if the existing generation were to be given a chance to live forever, but on the clear understanding that never again would there be a new baby or youth or first love, never again new persons with new hopes, new ideas, new achievements, ourselves for always and never any others. Could the answer be in doubt? We remember those that have come before us, just as we look forward to welcoming those who will follow. On page 6, Psalm 121.
עושה שמיים וארץ. אל ייתן למות רגליך ואל ינום שומריך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן, הנה לא ינום ולא יישן, שומר ישראל. אדוני שומריך, אדוני צילך, על יד ימינך, על יד ימינך, אדוני ישמרך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, אדוני ישמור את צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם.
Our tradition teaches that the human life may be 80 years and 10, or 80 years if we are fortunate and blessed with strength. So many days consumed by toil and troubles. Then our time is cut short. We fly away. So teach us to number our days, that we may bring home a heart of wisdom. Give us a sense of your presence. Nourish us with your compassion. Knowing your love from the dawn of our life, let us live our days in contentment. May our moments of joy surpass the times of struggle. May we taste the sweetness of each precious day. May the work of our hands bring fulfillment. Psalm 23, Adonai Roi. Adonai Roi, lo echzar, lo echzar, v'nod deshe, yarbiteni, yarbiteni. על מי מנוחות ינחלני, נפשי ישובב ינחני במעגלי צדק, למען שמו. Adonai Roi, lo echsar, gam ki elech begeit al mavet, lo irara, ki ata imadi. Shivtecha
משענתך, המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפני שולחן נגד תוראי, דשנת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
Before we transition to a series of remembrances which allow us to recall and to give thanks for the lives that have shaped our lives, it behoves us as a community of faith to pause for a moment as we turn through the pages of this memorial board, to think of those that have come before us, whose names and lives might be a little less familiar to us. We think of those members of this congregation who in generations gone by gave their life in the defense and service of this nation. We think of those men and women who served as presidents and rabbis of this congregation and who are no longer with us. We think of those whose generosity extended beyond their life to ensure that each and every one of us, as well as our children and our grandchildren, can be here today. And we pause to think about those who have been remembered on the memorial boards that sit at the rear of our sanctuary. So many lives, so many stories, so many blessings, so much for us to be thankful of. We think of all of them, those who we know, those who we have known, and those who are but names to us, as we give thanks to God for their life with the words of Yehil Ratzon on page 19. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our heart be acceptable to you, Eternal, our Rock and our Redeemer. Our loved ones live in our broken hearts. And at times that brings some measure of healing. Their acts of kindness and their generosity are the inheritance they leave behind. We feel their absence, but the beauty of their lives lives and abides amongst us. As it is said, the names of the one who died shall not disappear. Our loved ones' names and their memories will endure amongst us. Their names are on our lips and in our hearts, and we rise as we remember them. We begin first by recalling those who we've lost in our community between last Rosh Hashanah and this Yom Kippur.
We remember Ron Aarons, Maya Abrams, Brian Abramson, Rose Adler, Helena Alpert, Maya Esther Andrea, Irene Arapol, Pamela Axe, Olga Bartak, Andrew Benjamin Bletcher, Judith Ann Brand, Leah Brownstein, Sylvia Briggs, Minnie Bronson, Lorian Brown, Yvonne Catchpool, Helen Klassen, Layla Cohen, Rabbi Jeremy Collick, Gary Coupel, Peter Curtis, Susie Symbolist, Henry Singler,
Marie Davis, Kathy Deli, Tessa Diamond, Collier Donahue Andrusiak, Maria dos Años Baconchercha Ribeiro, Benjamin Earl, Sandra Eisner, Friend Eva, Annie Feinberg, Joyce Feinberg, Matilda Flack, Sophia Fleischer, Joseph Flagner, Sue Friedman, Deborah Friedlander, Jack Friedman, Joseph Friedman, Mila Fried,
Sylvia Gelman, Paulina Gershonas, Mary Gold, Jeffrey Goldstein, Richard Gottfield, Jeffrey Green, Stephanie Gray, Damian Grunis, Rose Guthrie, Sophie Hymanovitz, Lorraine Hall, Bob Hawke, Stephanie Heller, Anton Herman, Rob Hill, Jean Hill, Cyril Holzman, Marnie Hornaik, Rochelle Himes, Joseph Isaacs, Thomas Jelinek, Eileen Jenner, Graham Joel, Margaret Jones, Gloria Joseph,
Gladys Khan, Regina Kamenecki, Maria Cram, Laurie Kay, Gary Kay, Chan-Kok Kim, John Kersner, Manfred Klein, Eddie Komisarov, Louis Krasinski, Evelyn Lenton, Yitzhak Levi, Ralph Lewis, Rita Lieberman, Aya Masawe, Rose Mallinger, Max Mand, Devora Marks, Edna May, Miriam Menahem, Galena Milner, Victor Morris, Claire Morris, Gerald Morton, Rosa Muviova, Sandra Myers,
Elaine Nassau, Ray Nathan, Irene Edith Johanna Newman, Rosemary Newell, Solomon Norman, Suzanne Nozick, Zdenek Obrozhanik, Peter Orloff, Amos Oz, Anna Paul, Robert Phillip, Shai Pinto, Margaret Poll, Derek Prinsley, Lisa Kittner, Sylvia Radolnik, Gillian Rail, Jerry Rabinowitz, Robert Regner, Smorgan Robert, Leonard Roebuck, Judy Ann Rosenfeld, David Rosenthal, Cecil Rosenthal, George Rodsner, David Ross, Van Rothberg, Rose Rothfield,
Josephine Solomon, Victor Searle, Leon Siegel, Sol Schachter, Erez Shapira, George Shaw, Aaron Shane, Renee Silva, Rosalind Silva, Bernice Simon, Simon Sylvan, Elizabeth Slam, Maud Solomon, Hilda Solomon, Jean Splitter, Helen Stanton, Anne Starr, Daniel Stein, Margaret Swatlow, Alexander Vayner, Bernard Vallon, Nahum Volkov, Joyce Watson, Melvin Wax, Rhea Weber, Dorothy Wexler, Susan Wilder, Paulette Winograd, Jack Wodak, Diana Wolfe, Irving Younger. We also mourn the loss of the lives of those senselessly taken this past year through acts of terrorism and violence. As the anniversary quickly approaches, we particularly think of those who lost their lives doing just as we are doing today, praying in synagogue in Pittsburgh. This list of names are those that we recalled as a community this past year. But if you have other names that you would like to add to this list, other losses that you or your family have experienced in the last 12 months, before we pause for a few moments of silent reflection leading into the words of Yiskor, I want to invite you to share those names with us now. We then take a moment to recall the remembrances contained within this book of remembrance before we'll offer the words of Yiskor, which can be found on page 20. May God remember the soul of those who have been taken to the eternal home. For their sake of Tikkun Olam, I freely give tzedakah in their memory. For their sake of their precious souls, let my memories, my prayers, my acts of goodness bind them to the bond of life. May I bring honor to their memory by words and deeds. May they be at one with the one who is eternal, and may the beauty of their life shine forevermore. We take a copy of this memorial book, together with the remembrances of the Progressive Judaism Victoria, and our book of remembrance for those who have lost life from conception to early infancy. We place all of these remembrances as representative of that which we feel inside the ark as we offer the words of El Malei Rachamim.
El Malei Rachamim shochen bamromim המציא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה עם קדושים ודורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמות יקירינו שלחו לעולמם. בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסדר כנביו לעולמים. ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבם, ונאמר Amen.
Fully compassionate God on high, to our loved ones who have entered eternity, grant clear and certain rest within the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold them in your embrace. Secure their souls in eternity. O God, they are yours. May they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Before we share Kaddish Yatom together, the Mourner's Kaddish, we turn to page 56. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to old age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and up and back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage, made stage by stage to life everlasting. So along with the names that we have remembered of those who have been taken from us in the last year, we now think of those who've been taken in years gone by for this week of Yahrzeit. Remember James Montgomery Abrams, Morris Barra, Ignaz Deutsch, Julia Deutsch, David Davis, Wilma Esser, Leah Theresa Favel, George Halfin, Andor Uman, Marcus Hesselev, Lyle Jacobs, Russell Jacobson, Keith Harris Joseph, Anthony Kaplan, Cynthia Kennedy, Ernst Herman Kraus, Max Liebman, Janice Mansfield, Jim Matthews, Shirley Levy, Ursula Pekarski, Brain Devora Rechter, Yechiel Rinder, Rose Roster, Lou Rotman, Eva Saxon, Penina Tamir, Julia Turin, John Tregoning, Laura Tregoning, Greta Unger, and Max Weiner. And for all we remember, and for those who have no one to remember for them, we remember on page 409 of our Machzor and page 59 of the booklet. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, Yamad divrach yiritei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachonu v'yomechonu v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach la'olam u'lamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitzadam v'yitzaleh v'yitzalal, shemei d'kudisha b'richu. La'ela ul'ela min kol berchata, shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, damiran bi'alma v'yimaru, Amen. Yahei shlam araba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimaru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimaru, Amen. Hamakom yenachem echem betok shah havleit Zion v'Yerushalayim. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, comfort to all who are bereaved, in Zion and Jerusalem and around the world, and we say, Amen. And may the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to Israel. Amen.
Please be seated. That concludes our memorial service. Nila will begin at 6:45. 6:45.